Well, we are off to a great start. Sure hope this run won't abruptly come to an end anytime soon. Hello everyone and welcome. Today I answer the question, can I beat Dark Souls 3 by one-shotting everything? The rules of this run are simple. If I attack an enemy, then it must go from full health to dead in one hit. But if it dies of natural causes, well, that's just its own skill issue. Also, I know I literally just said the title of the video is to one-shot everything, but I actually mean all the bosses. Please, whatever you do, don't go down in the comments and leave an angry message saying I didn't one-shot Random Hollow number 407. Believe me, I know. Anyway, the first boss up is Gundyr, and... oh, dang it, looks like I ran out of memory. Must be the 4,000 tabs of research I have open hogging up all my RAM. If only there was a browser that specifically let me control the amount of resources my computer used. Oh wait, there is, and it's today's sponsor, Opera GX. That's right, today's video is brought to you by the browser that is designed with the user in mind. Now, I know what you're thinking. Doom, I don't want to switch browsers, I like my Internet Explorer. And I have just two things to say to you. One, really? And two, watch this kiddo because I'm about to blow your frickin' mind. Yes, of course everyone thinks switching browsers is hard, but Opera GX makes it so unbelievably easy. You just go to Settings, Synchronization, Import Bookmarks and Settings, select your previous browser and what you'd like to bring over, then just click Import. Yeah, no, like, it's actually that easy. I was expecting to have to download an archive of my stuff and upload it, but no, it's like literally 5 mouse clicks. But maybe you don't use bookmarks and are like me and just keep so many tabs open your PC constantly sounds like a jet engine trying to take off. Well, guess what? Opera GX has got you covered there too with their GX control panel. This handy little tool will let you see what tabs are taking up a large amount of your CPU and RAM, and even let you limit both those resources so you never have to worry about running out of memory when you're about to totally first try a Dark Souls boss. No really bro, trust me, I've got the best gaming chair and browser. All this under the hood stuff is awesome, but what about how it looks? Well, Opera GX already thought of that, and I will point you to their cool GX mods. Here you can totally change the background of your browser and even add some cool sound effects to it and some background music. Use my link in the description below to download Opera GX today. Thanks again to Opera GX for sponsoring this video. Now back to our regularly scheduled programming. So, I am sure some of you have already commented saying that this run is impossible right out of the gate. And you're right. Well, it's more like you're right, but with a tiny little asterisk next to it saying insert loophole here, but I'll get to that. First, there is just no way to one-shot Gundyr at this stage in the game. I tried to two-hand parry or post him and it did basically nothing, so that's it. Run's over, is what I would say, but y'all remember literally a few seconds ago I mentioned that tiny little text with a loophole? Well, if you just so happen to pull the sword out of Gundyr, wait for him to start moving, then immediately quit out, and when you spawn back in, you run into his arena, then pull a U-turn? Bam! That's outside Arena Gundyr, baby. I'm sure the Souls community came up with a better name than that, but whatever. Hey Doom, looks to me like you're on the wrong side of the fog gate. Well, thanks for that observation, O'Connell, and you are indeed correct, except I have all the horses, and by horses I mean this one terrifying blue crystal monstrosity. Now, I know a lot of you probably know where this is going, but for those of you that are the mini confused, remember how I said if enemies die to something else, then it's their skill issue? Well, the crystal lizard here just happens to be able to hit Gundyr. Pretty hard, I might add. The problem is that much like real-life lizards, this crystal variant has a brain the size of a fucking peanut. Also, every time the player or the lizard dies, you have to reset up this glitch. I'm using save states after clearing out the area, but it's still frustrating and takes a while. This is also why I took the Divine Blessing, so I could have an extra heal, but after several attempts where the crystal lizard kinda just didn't cooperate, I decided to invoke the age-old clause of the challenge starts after the tutorial. Mostly because I didn't want this video to either be 1, 5 minutes of me screaming at Gundyr and the world's dumbest blue Charizard, or 2, take 47 years to finish. So yeah, the challenge is technically over because the first boss can't be one-shot, but like, what are the odds the second boss is the same way, right? I mean, there's no way that'll happen. In Firelink, I totally definitely do the tree skip on the first try and grab the Estus Shard and Silver Serpent Ring, then it's off to the beautiful High Wall of Lothric. At this point I have two choices for boss fights, either the Dancer of the Boreal Valley or Vort, also of the Boreal Valley. Looking at their health pools, I'm gonna go ahead and say Vort is the best choice here. I fight this Mimic because it drops the Deep Battle Axe. Now, it's true that Vort has a weakness to dark damage, but this thing isn't gonna pack anywhere near enough of a punch to matter to him. Instead, I'm going to use it to farm a much greater axe. Literally the Great Axe. First though, I feel compelled to free Greirat, who gives me the blue Tearstone ring. Why, oh why didn't he give me the red one? Anyway, after about 30 minutes of farming, I finally get... I hate this game. After about an hour of farming, I get the Great Axe to drop. It has 32 as a strength requirement, but I'm able to two-hand it before that, so it's okay. Checking the wiki, I'm pretty sure this is the strongest weapon in the area. And now the only thing to do is to take on Vort. I let out a blood-curdling war cry, charge up my heavy attack, and... Not even close. Alright, so yeah, no, this isn't possible. Like, at all. Dark Souls 1 and 2 both let the player roam around quite a bit before needing to take on any bosses, but in comparison, Dark Souls 3 is essentially a long hallway. Sure, there are a couple side areas and branching paths, but you're more or less railroaded between bosses. As such, there's no way to get any stat boosting gear before the first boss, and thus no way to one-shot him. The run was dead before it even started. Also, for those of you wondering, yes, I did pick up the Wing Knight's Halberd, and I know it has a spinning multi-hit attack, but it wouldn't make a difference, trust me. Anyway, I could have just called it here. I mean, I answered the question. No, you can't one-shot all the bosses in Dark Souls 3. Without glitches. Of course, I could just mod in a maxed out weapon and all the stat boosting gear, put myself to 99 in every attribute, and then see what bosses could be one-shot, but that's less of a cool planned route through the game and more of a damage showcase. Interesting to be sure, but not exactly what I want to do here. So I clear out the area, make sure to be over 100% equip load, look at this very specific pixel, make a few time jumps backward, look at this other very specific pixel, jump backwards again, land on this little piece of roof definitely on the first try, and death cam. Now I just have to drive the tank that is myself all the way to Vort's arena, casually walk through the now not loaded doors, quit out, and when I load back in, Vort skip, baby. With access to the Undead Settlement, I am able to get a few more pieces of the puzzle. First is Yoel of Londor. He's gonna be able to get me a few free levels, but ultimately he's just a means to an end. Normally I would take on the Curse Rod at Greatwood, but that's actually an optional boss, so it doesn't really matter. Instead, I head to the top of the tower and make nice with the giant there. I didn't really need to do that, but I just wanted a friend. On the way down, I see Sigurd. I was actually hoping by not talking to him and not reloading the area that he wouldn't be here, but it seems the trigger is talking to the giant or just using the elevator. The reason I didn't want him to be here is because I didn't want him to accidentally die to the demon over there. I know he isn't technically a boss, but at this point while recording, I wasn't sure if I was going to count it as something that should be one-shot if I engaged it. So I opted to just quit out, hopefully putting Sigurd back on the ledge and out of harm's way. Anyway, at the top of this area, I pick up Flynn's Ring. This iteration is a little different than in Dark Souls 2. Here it increases damage based on your current equip load. Unfortunately, the Great Axe is pretty heavy, so I don't think it's beneficial, but hey, maybe I'm actually illiterate and it helps. Wouldn't be the first time. After that, I buy the Grave Key and save Arena. I wasn't sure if miracles would be useful in this run, but better to have the option than not. For that same reason, I also save Cornyx and grab the Fire Clutch Ring. With that, I am able to casually walk by this Boreal Outrider Knight and onto the Road of Sacrifices. First on my to-do list, get absolutely butchered by a murderer. Second try, I claim the oversized cooking knife. I didn't think it would be better than my planned weapon, but at this point I was basically grabbing everything that gave a damage boost. I picked up the Great Swamp Pyromancy Tome because shiny, then proceeded to pull the oldest trick in the book. Gravity's a bitch, ain't it, fellas? One of these two defenders drops the Great Club, which is great. When you activate its Warcry, the charged R2 becomes a 3-hit combo, still one button press though, so totally valid. After I convince Orbeck to join my merry band of misfits, I do the next logical thing. Destroy all his stuff. I then decided to head into Farron Keep because, man, I don't know, but this place sucks. Like, I used to think it was okay because I could just beeline it to the fires and put them out to be on my way, but now I actually gotta look around for things and get lost in the swamp while Shrek stalks me in the background. I don't know, I hate it here. Eventually, I grabbed the Greatsword, which I didn't even use, but I got it just in case. On a much more important note, I get the Dream Chaser's Ashes. This will allow me to buy an infinite supply of Titanite shards to upgrade my weapons. I also grab the Crown of Dust for that sweet Fashion Souls, and if I end up using magic, it'll help. Then I get the Golden Scroll so I can become best friends with Orbeck. Finally, I make sure to grab Great Magic Weapon to take out my earlier frustrations on this lizard, just for fun. At this point, I had died enough to make Yoel realize I'm a waste of time, and he too passes on, spawning Yuria. So Yuria here is a cool vendor, selling things like Dark Hand and whatnot, but more importantly, she gives me a quest. It would seem my best friend, Orbeck, challenges the throne I so rightfully deserve, and he must be put down. I thought it would be poetic to do this with the Dark Hand, so I started farming the Dark Race. It doesn't drop from them, but they do drop the most amount of souls in this area, I think. Now that was some Ultra Instinct bullcrap that I wouldn't be able to pull off if I was trying. After a while, I have both the Dark Hand and enough intelligence to cast Great Magic Weapon, just in case. Sorry it had to end this way, Orbeck. Oh, that's probably foreshadowing for how bad this thing's gonna be, huh? So I couldn't actually get it to grab him. The first time I thought maybe it was because he was sitting down, but the second time it didn't. I actually wasn't entirely sure it would even work and briefly wondered if it was for PvP only. So I turned my log blue and tried to give him a good smack, but unfortunately I hit the wall stopping my combo, so I'm not too sure if that would have even been enough to kill him. Also, how many of you noticed something rather alarming about that clip? Warcry cancels out Great Magic Weapon, meaning I can't stack them. That's actually really concerning. Either way, I go back to Orbeck to give him a good smash, but he survives. The good news is he's no longer sitting up against the wall, so hitting him should be easier. The bad news, he's no longer sitting still, so hitting him should be harder. I tried for an embarrassingly long amount of time to grab him and just couldn't. I seriously thought it just wasn't possible, but eventually I did manage to do it. And it did do a lot of damage. Just not enough because, why would it, honestly? Nothing a Warcry charge Great Axe couldn't fix, though. Anyway, I can turn his ashes into Yuria for my prize, the Morion Blade. This really cool looking weapon has a secondary effect where it's essentially a red tearstone ring, except, you know, a sword. Fortunately, I do not have to meet the stat requirements to have the effect proc, I just have to be below 20% health and hold it in my offhand. With that, I have collected everything I can before the next boss. Well, sort of. There are a few large shards around, but we'll just pretend I didn't forget about those. First, I set up the Morion Blade by tanking magic missiles to the face, then simply offhand the sword and two-hand the Great Club. I let out a war cry, charge up the strong attack, and it wasn't enough. Also, I have no idea why, but the second hit of this combo did practically nothing. In fact, while I was recording, I thought it did literally nothing and was mad because, like, why? Even now, I'm not sure why it did so little. I don't know if it's intentional for balancing purposes or what, but that kinda really sucks. Anyway, let's try that again. This time I'll start by Warcrying with the Great Axe, parry the Crystal Sage because yes, you can do that, switch to the Morion Blade, two-hand the axe and riposte for not enough. Again. It was closer, but it wasn't one upgrade away closer, so. The other boss available is the Abyss Watchers, and even though I admittedly didn't test them at this point, I was fairly certain if I couldn't do Crystal Sage, they would also be off the table. It would seem like the adventure has once again come to an end. Except not, because Dark Souls 3 has just as much jank as the other games in the series. See, if you run at this wall and jump to the side, you can land on this little ledge, which you can then sprint and jump up to land on a rock, where you can finally roll past the barrier to do Crystal Sage skip. Except this is way harder than it looks. I ended up getting stuck in this rock several times. Like, if getting stuck in this rock was an Olympic sport, I would have been a world champion, hands down. At some point, I landed on the ledge, then panic rolled thinking I was gonna get stuck again, only to get stuck in a different rock. This stone and I got so intimate, we have our own section in the Karma Sutra. But eventually, after a few hours of giving my thumb a blister, I managed to land on top and then angle myself to roll beyond the fog gate. The trick for anyone trying this at home is to stop holding the analog stick once you land on the ledge. Took me way longer than it should have to realize that. Once I finally did manage to get to the other side, I 100% save stated in case I did something stupid, but upon touching the bonfire, stage skip had been completed. Today I learned that these two NPCs are scared of bridges. I mean, who isn't, what with London Bridge constantly falling down? That joke was actually bad, and if you don't speak English, you probably didn't sing this song, and I should just cut that. Honestly, same though. You know, these firebombs would probably do more damage if I was at 99 strength. Alright, so, who wants to take a guess on how stupid Doom was today? If you said incredibly, congratulations, you are absolutely correct. The whole reason I even wanted to do Sage Skip was for Lloyd's Sword Ring. You know, the ring that boosts damage while you're at maximum health, that I was hoping would stack with the sword that I have that only works when you're almost dead? Can you see the issue? Because I sure didn't for the 3 hours I was attempting Sage Skip. Not all hope is lost though, there is something here that's still useful, and that is the Deep Braille Divine Tome, or more specifically the spell from it, Deep Protection. Deep Protection does a variety of things, but specifically it boosts attack power by 5%, and at this point I'm hoping every little bit counts. It requires 20 faith, and I totally farmed the Dark Race for that and absolutely did not bust out Cheat Engine. Anyone who timestamps this part of the video and comments it down below is a liar, so you definitely shouldn't do that. Now, I'll be completely honest, I had no faith, pun intended, that this small boost in damage would be enough to beat the Crystal Sage, but surprisingly the Abyss Watchers actually have less health than knockoff Big Hat Logan. Except one of them is wearing armor, and I'll let you guess which one that is. Anyway, I went ahead and repeatedly fell off this little cliff until I was in Morion Blade range, then stood in this oddly specific spot, swung my sword really hard, quit out, and Abyss AI freeze. This glitch actually wasn't necessary, it's just when you do these kinds of runs, having the boss stand still and get punched in the face is really nice. Anyway, Morion Blade Warcry boosted Deep Protection to Great Axe to the back did? Yeah, that sounds about right. Just for fun, I went ahead and got my strength and dexterity up to 99 and tried again, and that did more. Like, legitimately, that is an increase, but as you can see, that Abyss Watcher is still very much alive. I think. Are these guys undead? I also decided to test the Great Club, and I know he's not at full health when I do this, but like, he's still alive even after both weapons, so it doesn't matter. Just for fun, I went ahead and tried Crystal Sage with Deep Protection, and yeah, that 5% extra attack wasn't enough. But you know what would be enough? Probably. Upgrading my weapon past a +3. Sure, there are a few large shards around, enough to make it a +5, but that likely won't cut it. Fortunately, there is an enemy that drops both large shards and chunks. It's the Corvian Knight in the Painted World DLC, which I luckily have access to. Which one is the Corvian Knight again? Right, yeah, so we all agree that I totally farmed that enemy until I had as many shards and chunks as I'll ever need. Yep, that is absolutely what happened. With Great Axe and Great Club beefed up to a +9, I went back to the Crystal Stage and decided to manually set my strength and dexterity back to 32 and 15 respectively. And I also didn't use Deep Protection in the setup, you'll see why in a minute. So, will a +9, Morion Blade boosted, Warcry riddled Great Axe supposed to be enough to one-shot the Crystal Sage? Yes! Yes, it was. Awesome, I have finally been able to one-shot a boss in this Gwyn Forsaken game. So the good news, as you can see by my celebrating on screen, it was a one-shot, albeit just barely. The bad news, Crystal Sage doesn't block anything. I mean, he would have had I not skipped past him, but I did, so like, this didn't matter. The Abyss Watchers though, now they would actually be useful to get by. So I take my raisin looking ass over there, perform the AI freeze, then do the setup, this time including Deep Protection. First I go for a backstab, which does about half, which I mean isn't a one-shot, but like imagine just casually two-shotting a boss without much effort. But we aren't here for backshots, I want to smash them with my big stick. So I load a save, redo the glitch, and whip out my massive wood doing a staggering... Oh wow, that's actually more than I thought it would be, but still not enough. I went ahead and put my stats back to 99, which did cause a little more damage, but once again, that man is still very clearly not dead. Thankfully, there's still a couple things I can do. First, I head back through the Swamp of Crabs, run by the scary man with a large sword, and grab the Farron Coal. This will allow me to infuse my weapons with a few different gems, namely a heavy gem on my Great Club so the scale increases from B to A. Then I head back to the Painted World to pick up some good old reading material. Man, that tree is being a real birch right now. After chopping the fire and iced wood, I climbed this random ladder that spawned, and at the very top I was able to get a Titanite slab. With that I can bring my heavy Great Club to a maximum level of +10 and then try the Abyss Watchers one more time. You know the drill, Deep Protection, Morion Blade, two-hand, Warcry, charge the R2 and... Holy crap, it was enough. I mean, totally calculated. Fortunately, the AI freeze continues to work in Phase 2 and they don't have any different health or defenses, so... Alright, I'll be honest, I didn't expect that to work. I was prepared to launch to a rant about this game not wanting the player to be overpowered. Don't worry, I'm still going to complain, it's just going to be delayed a couple minutes. In hindsight, this probably only worked because I had 99 strength, because I was barely over their health total. If only there were other ways to make myself stronger. Oh wait, there are, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, with the Abyss Watchers down, I've gained access to two more bosses, the old Demon King and High Lord Wolnir. Of the two of them, the main target is Wolnir because, you know, progression, but he's kind of a problem. See, Dank Lord Wolnir here is mighty fond of his bracelets. They are the key to taking him down. Break the bracelets, break the man. But they're split, two on his left hand and one on his right. In other words, even if I was able to hit both on his one arm in a single attack, he'd still have a third one keeping him alive. I thought maybe Earth and Wrath would have been a big enough AoE to hit him, but after observing the sheer size of this chunky skeleton, I don't think so. And so this is where the run ends. Sort of. There actually is a way to beat him in one hit, but it requires another person's help, and if you think I have friends, you must be new to this channel. The final boss of the Ring City DLC, Gale, has a crossbow for a boss weapon, the repeating crossbow. Now, I know what you're thinking. A crossbow? How will that ever deal more damage than a Great Club? And you're right, normally it wouldn't. Except you can definitely moveset swap to fire 10 Great Bow arrows instead of bolts, and that definitely does more damage than a single Great Club swing. The problem is I definitely haven't made my way to Gale, and even if I did, I'd have to beat him, and even if I did that, I'd have to beat the Curse Rod of Greatwood to make the boss weapons. Side note, it actually is possible to one-shot the big tree with some fire, but since I had no way of getting the crossbow, I didn't bother. There are still several bosses alive I could try, but they all simply have too much health to one-shot. The worst part about this, though? I'm not even close to the maximum potential for damage. Perhaps you've been wondering all this time, where is the Red Tearstone Ring? What about Power Within? The Dragon Stones! Yeah, me too. Red Tearstone Ring is close by, but it's on the other side of the Dancer. Power Within is all the way in the Grand Archives, which is behind the Dancer, Dragon Slayer armor, and needing to actually get the key, which doesn't spawn until you beat 3 Lords of Cinder. and the Dragonstone is in the Irithyll dungeon behind Wolnir. There are a few other things that could help, like the Sunlight Straightsword, which has the Oath of Sunlight skill, also behind the Dancer, but those are the main ones and they're all simply out of reach. In older versions of the game, there actually was a glitch that would let you get by the Dancer, and even into the archives early. So if you'd like to see someone truly break this game over their knee, then I suggest checking out Bian's video over it because he does some pretty crazy stuff. Man's a technomancer, I swear. Something I realized halfway through this run is that you can totally one-shot Crystal Sage and the Abyss Watchers without doing any kind of skips or glitches. You just have to fight the Dancer early, grab the Red Tearstone Ring and the Sunlight Straightsword from Lothric Castle, then if you farm some large shards from the Lothric Knights and grab all the chunks, you'll be able to make a weapon plus 9. At that point, you just get a Great Exadrop and play the game like normal, making sure to get Orbeck, murder him, and get the sword, then bam! That's the setup that would let you one-shot Crystal Sage. Then you'd have legitimate access to the Painted World, which means a Titanite Slab for the Abyss Watchers, and since you're stacking both RTSR and Morion Blade, 99 strength wouldn't be necessary. With that said, I think it's finally time to bring this run to an end, but first, let's go out on a high note. Oh Vort, it's time for your annual beatdown. Thank you everyone for watching, and an extra special thanks to my patrons. Stay beautiful, y'all. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving a like and subscribing. It really helps the channel out, and maybe consider checking out the time I did the one-hit challenge in Dark Souls 2. That one nearly broke me, I'm not going to lie. But until next time, my friends, don't you dare go hollow.